Hey everyone, I'm BakaShift.
And I'm Lanky Spirit.
And we're here today to teach all of you how to play Weiss Schwarz. This card game revolves around the idea of playing your favourite anime characters onto a stage and putting on a show that involves battling against your opponent. You win the game by dealing damage to your opponent through attacks with your characters. This damage is dealt by revealing cards from the top of their deck, and to become the victor you have to deal a total of 28 damage broken down into 4 levels of 7 starting at 0.
To start things off, let's show you a card of each type and break down the relevance of each section. So, this is a character card. These make up about 80% of your deck and are how you deal damage to, well, win the game. In the top left hand corner of the card, you have the card's level. This indicates which level you have to be at in order to play the card. We'll explain the relevance of that in a bit. Just below that is the card's cost. This is how much stock you need to pay in order to play the card. Over in the top right of the card is the trigger icon. This tells you what effect the card will have when it is triggered during an attack. On characters, this will only ever be blank or a trigger of 1 soul. Moving down the card, we have a lovely picture, some lovely flavour text. Below this is the card's effect text. This portion indicates, well, what the card does. Then here we have the card's name, and the surrounding box indicates the card's colour. So as you can see, this card is a green card. To the lower left of this box, we have the character's power. This is what determines the winner during the battle step. Just to the right of that we have the character's soul points. The number of soul icons here will either be 1 or 2, and this represents how much damage is dealt to the defending player during the damage step. Then finally, on the lower right of the card we have the card's traits. These will either do nothing or have synergy or relevance with other cards. The next card type we have are event cards. Unlike character cards, these are cards with an effect that won't remain in play once the action has been completed. You'll typically only be running between 0 and 3 of these in any given deck. The card layout is the same as for characters, only because it's simply a one-time effect and doesn't remain on the stage. It has no power, soul, or traits. The final card type are climax cards. If we described character cards as your way to win the game, climaxes are your way of not losing the game. A deck will always run 8 climax cards, and their effects are twofold. If the card is in your hand, you may play it into the climax area during your climax phase. This card will have an effect on your characters in play until the end of your turn. The most important thing climaxes do though, is to cancel the damage you receive from your opponent's characters. As you can see, the real joy of climaxes is that they are to be viewed horizontally. On the top left, or top right if you're viewing it vertically, we still have the trigger icon. What's fancy about climaxes though, is that unlike the 2 available triggers on your characters and events, there are 7 different things you can trigger from a climax card. Then moving down the card, much the same as the other cards, we have a tasty piece of art, some lovely flavour text, the card's name and colour, and the text box explaining what effect the card has when it is in play.
The decks myself and Lee will be using for this tutorial are 2 of the English pre-built trial decks, Madoka Magica and Fate Zero. At the start of each game you must first decide who plays first. This is commonly done through rock paper scissors, but feel free to decide through dice or whatever method you see fit. I won, so I have to take the first turn.
Each player will shuffle up, place their deck to the right of the stage, and draw an opening hand of 5 cards from the top. Once you look at your opening hand, you can then choose which cards from this hand you wish to keep and which ones you would like to replace with new cards. At the beginning of the game, you start at level 0, and thus the only characters you can play onto the stage at this level are those also at level 0. With this in mind, the cards you want to aim to get rid of from your opening hand are those with levels higher than this. If you do have level 0s to play, it is often acceptable to keep a level 1 or a climax card in your hand, but generally level 2s and 3s should be dropped in favour of potentially grabbing a few more low level cards. The cards you dispose of get sent to the waiting room, which is the area directly below your deck. Your waiting room is the place all the cards from their various areas will end up after performing their roles. In my opening hand, I keep the level 0 Homura, as it is my only playable card, and I discard my other 4 in hope of getting some more level 0s.
And in mine I keep the Waver and Lancer level 0s, a level 1 Iris Veil I'll be able to use soon, and drop these 2 as they have no relevance at this point in the game. We then draw cards equal to the amount we dropped, and with our opening hands ready, it's time for me to make my first turn. Each turn starts with the stand phase, where you'll stand any characters in rest, but this is irrelevant during the opening turn of the game. We then move into the draw phase, where every turn you'll draw a card from the top of your deck. Following the draw phase, we're then able to filter the cards from our opening hand even further during the clock phase. In this phase, you are given the option to choose a card from your opening hand and place it onto your clock, then draw 2 new cards cards from the top of your deck. The clock area is positioned to the left of your waiting room and runs along the bottom here. This area is where damage is dealt to you, so effectively by clocking you are paying 1 damage and losing a card to draw 2 cards. You should always clock on your first few turns, as if you don't you'll run out of cards in your hand very quickly and often be left with a lack of presence on the stage. Throughout the game, clocking is a great way to filter the cards you draw and sculpt your hand to best fit the state of play. Now it's time to move into the main phase and get this show on the road. During your main phase, you can play event and character cards from your hand, freely move around any characters currently on the stage, and use any act abilities your characters may have. The stage is made up of 2 separate areas, and those are the centre stage and backstage. The 3 slots of the centre stage are where you will place your characters to deal damage to your opponent and do battle with your opponent's centre stage characters. The 2 slots on the backstage are to be reserved for characters with assist abilities and characters with repeatable act abilities that you don't wish to lose in battle with your opponent's centre stage characters. There is nothing to stop you from swinging in battle with your support characters if the situation calls for it, but you want to have a high-powered characters in the centre stage and characters to support and reinforce them in the backstage. During the very first turn of the game, you may only attack with 1 character, so in order to prevent losing characters for no reason, I'll only place Loyal and Brave Lancer in the centre stage, and I'll play the assist character Shallow-Blooded Magus Waver in the backstage too, so Lancer's power is as high as possible in the next turn. The most common effect for an assist character to have is all your characters in front of this card get plus 500 power. This refers to the 2 characters diagonally in front of the slot your assist character is in. So in Lee's next turn, Lancer will have 3500 power. After the main phase, we have our climax phase. During this phase, you're able to play a single climax card from your hand into the climax area to the left of the stage if you so desire, but seeing as this is the first turn and Lee has an empty stage, there is no reason to do so. Once this phase has ended, we move into the attack phase. The attack phase is made up of 6 different steps: the attack declaration step, the trigger step, the counter attack step, the damage step, the battle step, and the encore step. During the attack declaration step, there are 3 different ways to declare an attack, each method having an effect on the amount of damage your character will deal. The 3 ways to attack are front, side, and direct. When you declare an attack, make sure you're aware you're only able to attack into the slot directly opposite your character. In this situation, the only way we can attack is through a direct attack, as a direct attack is an attack where there is no character in the slot facing your character on your opponent's center stage. When a direct attack is declared, you take your character's base soul, which in this instance is 1, and add an additional soul to it. Then we have our trigger step. During the trigger step, you take the top card of your deck, reveal it, and look at the icon in the top right hand corner of the card. There are 9 different things that can be triggered here, and in this situation we have triggered a card with a single soul icon. This single soul icon adds an additional soul to a character, so with 1 base soul, 1 soul from the direct attack alteration, and 1 soul from the triggered card, Lancer is swinging in with 3 soul total. Once the triggered card has been revealed, you place it face down in the stock area. The cards in your stock area are used to pay the cost shown below the level on characters and events, as well as any costed effects characters on the stage may have. The next step is the counter attack step. This step is only used during front attacks, so we'll get onto this in a few turns time. Then we come to our damage step. In this step, your opponent takes damage equal to the soul of the character you're currently attacking with. So in this situation, Lancer is dealing 3 damage. The player taking the damage then reveals cards from the top of their deck into their clock area equal to the damage they are taking. On the second card, Lee reveals a climax. When a climax card is revealed from the deck whilst taking damage, then you stop revealing cards and all the damage from the current attack is cancelled. These cards are now sent to the waiting room instead. Damage has now been dealt, and the 2 remaining steps, the battle step and the encore step, will most often only be relevant if a front attack has taken place. The final phase of the turn is the end phase. Aside from effects on specific cards, the only 2 things you'll do during this phase are moving a climax you may have played from the climax area to the waiting room and discarding any cards in your hand you have in excess of 7 to the waiting room.
I now begin my first turn. There is no change to phase order, and the only difference is that the player who plays second is now able to attack with all 3 of their centre stage characters. So, I will draw, clock, and move into my main phase. During my main phase, I'll play Dark-Haired Girl Homura, Childhood Friend of Kyosuke Sayaka, and Nurse's Aid Madoka into my centre stage. I now move into my climax phase, and with the 3 characters in my centre stage, I'm able to play a climax card for more value. I'll play The Girl from the Dream, which has the effect when this card is placed on your climax area from hand, put the top card of your deck to stock, and all of your characters get +1 soul until the end of turn. So I'll place the top card of my deck to the stock area without looking, and all my characters now have an additional soul added to their base of 1 for the turn. Now I'll move into the attack phase, and I'm now able to declare all 3 different modes of attack. With the character in the opposing slot, I can declare a front attack or a side attack. In a front attack, the 2 facing characters will battle against one another, with the attacking character's base soul remaining the same. And when declaring a side attack, the character's base soul is reduced by 1 for each level of the opposing character. When a side attack takes place, the attack is sent around the opposing character, thus ignoring the battle phase. In this situation, none of my characters are able to match the 3500 power of Lancer, so I'll choose to side attack. So I've declared a side attack on Lancer and move into the trigger phase. Now that all 9 possible triggers will have an effect on the current stage, I'll explain what their effects are. No trigger. When the hexagon in the corner of an event or character is empty, the attacking character's soul remains the same. Soul trigger. When there is a soul icon in the hexagon, like last turn, the attacking character gains an additional soul for the turn. The following 7 triggers are exclusively shown on climax cards, with only the following present in all colours. 2 soul trigger. Unsurprisingly, triggering 2 soul grants 2 additional soul to the attacking character. Exclusively in yellow we have shot. This trigger will grant an additional soul to the attacking character, and if the damage the character deals is cancelled, the opposing player takes 1 additional damage. That damage can also be cancelled. And wind. This trigger also grants an additional soul to the attacking character, and you may return any character on your opponent's stage to their hand when it is triggered. Exclusively in green we have bag. When bag is triggered, you may put the top card of your deck to stock face down without looking at it before placing the triggered card to stock. And treasure, which when triggered you place into your hand instead of into stock, and then may place the top card of your deck into stock face down without looking. Exclusively in red there is gate, which when triggered you may return a character card from your waiting room to your hand. Then finally, and exclusively in blue, there is book, which when triggered allows you to draw a card. In this situation though, I triggered a card without a trigger icon, so Homura's soul remains at 2 from its base soul, plus the additional soul from the climax I played. Because this was a side attack, I would get a soul reduction if the facing character was level 1 or higher, but as I'm sure you've figured out, deducting 0 from 2 leaves the soul count the same, so Alan takes 2 damage. I then declare a direct attack with Sayaka. She has 1 base soul, is getting additional soul from the climax I played, and an additional soul from the direct attack. I move into my trigger phase, and trigger a climax card with a 2 soul trigger icon, bringing my character's total soul to 5. Alan takes 5 damage and reveals a climax on the 4th card turned over. As with last turn, all damage taken from this attack is cancelled, and all cards revealed are sent to the waiting room. When I declare a direct attack with Madoka over here, I am able to activate her auto effect, which relies on comboing with the climax I played earlier. So the card's effect is, if the girl from the dream climax I played is in the climax area, I can pay 1 to choose a character from my clock, return it to my hand, then replace it with the top card of my deck. I will choose to do so as though I am unable to play the card I clocked this turn, it's still gaining the card advantage. This effect activates during the attack declaration step, and we again move into the trigger step, and I trigger a card with no trigger icon and deal 3 damage. Alan takes his 3 damage without cancelling, and the attack phase ends. I now move into my end step, move the climax I played from the climax area to the waiting room, and pass the turn back to Alan.
I now stand Lancer, who is in the rest position from attacking during the last turn. During the last turn I was dealt 5 damage, putting the damage in my clock area up to 6. Now when I clock a card, the damage in my clock will reach 7 and I need to level up. When you level up, you'll take a single card from the first 7 cards in your clock and place it horizontally to the left of your clock in the level area. The amount of cards in your level area determine the highest level of card you're allowed to play from your hand. It's at this point in the game that the colour of the cards that you play become most relevant. In order to play a level 1 or above character or event, or play a climax into the climax area from your hand, you'll need to have a card of that colour either in your clock area or in your level area. So in this situation, I'm emptying my clock area and placing 1 card in my level area, thus will only be able to play cards of 1 colour. I've chosen a yellow card from my clock as the level 1 cards in my hand at this time are all yellow. Now that we've covered all other areas in play, the only one we haven't mentioned is memory. The memory area is located above your deck and is only relevant to specific cards, none of which are present in these 2 trial decks. So now I draw the 2 cards from clocking and move into my main phase. I have 1 stock available to pay the cost for cards I play, so I first pay this 1 stock to play the Einsburn Castle event card, which allows me to search my deck for 1 character with the weapon or alchemy trait, reveal it and put it into my hand. I find Mayu Hisao and play her onto the centre stage along with Proxy Master Iris Veil. I then move into the attack phase, and with all my characters having higher power than their facing characters, I will be making 3 front attacks. I declare a front attack on Homu Homu with Mayu and make my trigger check. I reveal a climax card with a 2 soul trigger icon, dealing 3 damage to Lee and move into the battle phase. Mayu's power is currently at 6,000 from her continuous effect that gives her plus 1,000 power if I have 4 or less cards in my hand. This power is then matched against the 3,000 power of Homer, and she is sent to the reverse state having been defeated. I declare a second front attack on Sayaka with Iris Veil, trigger another 2-soul climax and deal a further 3 uncancelled damage. When the damage was dealt, Lee revealed a Lonely Fight Homer into his clock. This card has the shift ability shown by the clock icon below the card's cost. Cards with the shift ability on your clock can be exchanged with any card of the same colour from your hand at the start of your main phase. Lee now has 7 damage in his clock and levels up. Sayaka too is sent to reverse with her 3,000 power being significantly less than the 7,000 power of Iris Veil after Waver's assist boost. I declare my final front attack on Madoka with Lancer and trigger a card with a single soul icon. Now we move into the counter attack step, which up until this point was an irrelevant step as neither of these decks have cards that use this step at level 0.
Lancer's power is currently at his unaltered base stat of 3,000.
Madoka's power is at 2,500, so during this attack Lancer would normally be sending Madoka to reverse. Lee leveled up during the last attack and is now able to use the level 1 character card Magical Girl of Swords Sayaka. This card has the backup ability, as made clear by the fist icon located below the card's cost. When you use a card for the backup ability, you will pay the cost shown in the text box and discard it from your hand during this step of the attack phase. Sayaka's backup ability gives out a boost of plus 2,000 power to Madoka, whose power is now raised to 4,500, meaning she will be able to defeat Lancer's 3,500 in the battle step. Make sure you note the backup is only to be used when your character is being front attacked and cannot be used on the offensive. Then Lee takes the 2 damage from the attack, which is cancelled on the first card revealed. We then move into the battle step and Lancer is sent to reverse. We are now also in a situation where we have actions in the encore step. A character being in reverse is the main relevance of the encore step. Certain cards will have alternate ways to be encored to remain on the stage, but you may pay 3 stock to encore any reversed character. When a character is encored, you simply put it from reverse to rest. Any characters you do not wish to encore's time on the stage is over, and they are sent to the waiting room. There are no actions to take place in this end phase, so the turn is sent back to Lee.
And that is how you play Weiss Schwarz. We play through the rest of the game as we've explained up to this point. When levelling up to levels 2 and 3, the same principle applies as with level 1. Once I've taken 7 damage in level 1, I am able to level up again and play level 2 cards like Fighting Against Fate Homer. And once I've taken 7 damage in level 2, I will level up to level 3 and I'm able to play cards like the level 3 Madoka Kaname. Then the game is won when either player deals 7 damage to their opponent in level 3. Whenever you run out of cards in your deck in Weiss Schwarz, instead of losing the game like in many card games, you simply shuffle all the cards in your waiting room together and place them back in your deck area. Whenever you deck refresh, you will be forced to take a compulsory damage from the top of your deck onto your clock. Unfortunately, if a climax is revealed in this way, the damage is not cancelled and stays on your clock. On the final attack of the game, Alan is currently at level 3 and has 4 damage on his clock. I front attack with a Kemi Homura, reveal a card with a single soul icon, adding an additional to her base soul of 2.
And now take the 3 damage from Homi's attack and don't manage to cancel it. Having taken 7 damage in level 3, I have now been defeated and Lee is the victor.
If you enjoyed this tutorial, please do subscribe and check out our other videos.
And we hope you'll all enjoy playing Weiss Schwarz.
After the main phase, we have our climax phase.